A lot of runners, especially in ultra running, like to kind of glamorize the pain and suffering, but typically there's not a closer examination of the types of pain. Basically, in my mind, there's two to worry about. One, productive discomfort. Two, unproductive discomfort. Productive discomfort leads to growth. Unproductive discomfort leads to setbacks and injury and expenses. One way to think about this, when yin and yang are in perfect balance, you're kind of holding steady there in the middle. What most runners are after is growth, to become better at some aspect of running, maybe faster, maybe running further, maybe both. But what we often see in running is obviously a lot of people in decline, and then they exit the hobby of running. It comes down to learning to have a deeper, much deeper focus and awareness of everything that's going on within your body. Fatigue is generally a productive discomfort. You're too hot, you're too cold, generally productive discomfort. If you have sore muscles, such as the type you'd get from lifting weights or doing too many sit-ups or push-ups, that's generally productive discomfort. Sharp pains or anything that leads to a chronic problem would be unproductive discomfort and something to be avoided, something to be dealt with immediately. I think that most of the discomforts we feel during an ultra marathon are relatively minor warning signs. For example, maybe the knee starts aching just a little bit, and you realize, if you're paying attention, that it's time to maybe do some stretching and or slight modifications to your stride. Or perhaps you're starting to get a blister, or even already have some minor blistering. First, you have to deal with the blister, do what you can to alleviate any pain, minimize any damage, but then try to deal with the underlying root cause of that blister during your race. So when you're dancing on that line between productive discomfort and unproductive discomfort, there's some risk obviously at that point, and you really need to stay tuned in to everything happening around you and within your body. One of my favorite authors in the area of running training would be Danny Dreyer, who wrote Chi Running, C-H-I, Chi Running as in Tai Chi. And what he taught was to only work on one type of improvement at a time. And if that improvement is, say, running further or running faster, increments of 10% at a time in growth are better for reducing risk. So getting into some personal successes and failures, it's been well over 10 years of steady ultra running now, steady in that I haven't had to back away due to injuries. So basically no injuries that required financial expenditure or medical intervention or chiropractic, anything like that. So more than 10 years is pretty phenomenal to be effectively injury-free. The average person is into ultra running for about 3.5 years. So to go nearly 3 times that amount of time without injuries is pretty good, but it didn't start off that great. In my early attempts at getting into ultra running, I definitely broke the 10% rule over and over. I would work on multiple improvements by more than 10%. So say I was transitioning into minimalist, zero drop, lightweight footwear, and at the same time ramping up my distances and sometimes my pace by much more than 10%. What that resulted in my case, was dramatically overtraining for my first 50K. I remember at one point doing a 4-a-day workout, 8 miles at a time, 4 times in one day. About 5 days before my first 50K, went out on a 5-mile run, and right after the run, walking back to the house, I felt kind of a snap in my ankle. Sort of felt like somebody hit me in the leg with a baseball bat. And so of course I didn't run until the race, the coming Saturday. Turns out, long story short, is I ended up running a 50K on a stress fracture. It then took me about 3 weeks to get it properly diagnosed, and another at least 11 or 12 weeks after that for it to truly heal up so that I could get back to running. I learned a lot about setbacks, expenses, lost time, and becoming super aware, super tuned into my body. I was doing things like lifting my foot off the ground and gently shaking the foot so that I could sort of body sense the slightest change in how the healing process was happening in that right ankle, so that I could get right back to the running that I was missing as soon as possible. And just over 10 years later, maybe getting a little overconfident, I overtrained for a 100-miler in early October, finished it just a little slower than hoped, and then right away came back pretty quickly and overtrained for what I hoped was going to be a Boston qualifier marathon in early November. After some back-to-back relatively fast runs for me on similar terrain to what the marathon was going to be, I ended up in some pretty nasty pain. I would describe it as pain serious enough I almost called a chiropractor. Instead, I did yoga, self-massage, applied products like Icy Hot and Arnicare, and was able to run that marathon in a lot of discomfort and 45 minutes slower than I needed to run it. So just a few other things. In my opinion, transitioning to minimalist footwear or barefoot running is a very, very worthwhile effort. Anytime you're getting anywhere near that line, you're trying to grow, be careful about doing too many races or too many group runs or listening to music. I would suggest trying to stay pretty tightly focused on everything that's going inside as well as all around you. If you were to try to do all of the chi running form focuses at one time, it would take up most of your brain power. Unless you're fortunate enough to have gained unconscious competence, a topic I covered a few videos back.